Everybody, this is Perch, and here's a thought-provoking kind of viewer question, and it basically goes like this. Hey, Perch, what responsibility to the larger, louder voices within comics, what responsibility do they have to de-escalate the current tension and current divide within comics? Just like people are asking right now for the news media to do more to de-escalate the polarization, the anger that people feel toward topics. What about comics? At what point shouldn't the large YouTubers, shouldn't the comic creators, shouldn't the publishers, shouldn't the news reporters, are there news reporters for comics? Not really, but I catch your point. I catch your point. What responsibility do these people have to de escalate the current conflict within the fan community? All right, it's an interesting question. Um, I'll give you a very off the cuff answer, which is none. Now, I'll go into more depth here, but which is that sounds like a really crappy answer, and it's not a fan favorite answer, I would say, but it's an honest one. I wish certainly some things could be done so people weren't complaining and fighting and biting each other apart. I wish that there was less of that. I do think there's opportunities for people to come and do some good by simply explaining themselves. I think the people who have I've interviewed on this show, I mean, Jeff Thorne is probably the best example of this because, yeah, I came out and did an interview with him, and he was coming right off the cusp of Bleeding Cool running an article talking about how, hey, the new Green Lantern writer hates Hal Jordan. Huh? Doesn't that make you mad? They didn't add that last part, but that's exactly what that article was. That article was designed to kind of poke people to get clicks, and people got poked. So immediately they're on Twitter like, I hate this guy, and they're just bitching and bitching. And then Jeff came on. We did an interview. It was funny. He was very. It showed that he has a deep knowledge of comics lore. Talked a little bit about what his point of view, and I mean, it seemed to de-escalate. I think it did some good. Now, all that said, I don't think Jeff has a responsibility. Maybe that's the word I'm getting hung up on. I don't think he has a responsibility to do that. I think it's a nice thing to do. I think some of the larger, louder YouTubers who are dicks, it would be nice if they were less dicks, less dickish. You get my point. Yeah, I think that would be great. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody has a moral obligation or responsibility to do these things. I think when you have the opportunity to do good, try and do good. If you have the opportunity to back people away from the edge of a cliff where they're acting like raving lunatics, try and do that as much as you can, because every now and then you're going to feed the other direction. Hopefully inadvertently. I think it's very easy to accidentally get people worked up. I think you can get, we all are human and we deserve to have emotions and other things. And we can get emotional about something, get worked up about something. And sometimes people go off and they run off and they do stupid things with that information. And I think that it's not, your fault, my fault that people do these things. Everybody's responsible for their own actions. But you don't want to encourage that. Nobody sets out. Well, I say nobody. I don't set out in my day hoping to wind a bunch of people up into a crazy frenzy. That's never my goal, and I'd like to think that's nobody's goal. I'm not an idiot. I'm sure, for some people that is a goal, but that's not my goal. And it'd be nice if there was less of that. But I'm not going to say it's impossible. I've said not too often on this show, but I have said from time to time, please don't go and harass people I talk about. If I talk about somebody who's doing something dumb, and I don't want you to do that. Everybody does dumb things. Everybody does dumb things. Everybody should not be harassed and chased around for every dumb thing that happens. As I've given the advice here on the channel, the best form of protest, the best thing you can do is, or at least step one, stop buying it. Stop spending money. Starve it from your cash. This has a dual effect of sending a message, albeit a small one, because it's just one individual. But the bigger thing it does to help is for yourself. It helps save your own sanity from feeling like you spent a bunch of money and were tortured by it. That's nobody wants that. Nobody should have that. I think what makes this complicated is if you ask me this about the news, about journalists who are not, I'm not talking Newsarama or CBR, I'm talking about real journalists. No offense, but, well, maybe a little bit of offense, but in all honesty, I count myself. I'm not a journalist. I'm an idiot here saying things on YouTube. That's not a journalist. I've given Mumbles already his quote for this video. Great. I think that if you're in the news media, if you're a journalist, if you have those credentials, if you're, you get special privileges for being a journalist. You get to go certain places, you have a certain responsibility. And there, I think that word applies. I think you do have a responsibility. And I do think if you're in the news, if you are a card carrying journalist, I think that you have in this case, I think the word's right, you have a moral obligation not to spread falsehoods, not to wind people up, not to encourage this giant divide we currently find ourselves in as a culture, as a society. Because things are lousy out there. I mean, you people immediately will jump to an impression on anything because we are so polarized, we are so divided. By the way, one interesting little thing. It goes along with kind of the bubbles that people find themselves in social media. If you might believe that the only kind of aggravation in comics, the only angst, is from comic creators and then a group of people who say that the comic creators are too liberal or too socially justice minded or whatever it happens to be, too woke, right? There is that may be all you see. Guess what? There is a whole other world. And I stumbled across this a little bit this weekend. It was shocking to me. People who are super angry at comic creators for, can you guess, being too right wing. Right now, you may be going, no, believe it or not, go look. There is a whole assortment, whole batch of people who are angry at the publishers for being too right wing, leaning too much into a militaristic police state kind of superhero fantasy. I kid you not. Go down the rabbit hole. Well, don't, because it's a giant waste of your time. But it's out there. It's amazing. My point here is that we are so polarized now that people are complaining about everything. And I think if you are in the news media, if you're a journalist, if you're somebody whose job it is to accurately convey and report on the news and the information, you should do your best to try and not inflame passion. But I don't think comic books are the same. I love comic books deeply. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this channel with all these videos and everything else. I clearly have a giant passion and a love for comics and everything that goes along with them. But comics are not the news. And this is my own personal opinion. You may have your own line to draw, and that's fine. Everybody's got their own way they weigh in on this. But I think that with comics, because it is entertainment, because the people who work in comics are not having to kind of sign up to any oath or not having to, it is not the same. I think with comics, you should absolutely, as the right thing to do, try and de-escalate tension, try and do the best you can. But at the end of the day, a lot of the people are commenting on an entertainment property. They're having disagreements of views as to whether, say, Brie Larson is smiling enough or not. That is not something that I think people have a moral obligation to weigh in and fix. People are going to have their views, and they're going to have their views. I do not think it's fair. And I know I've seen some comic creators who've said this, and I've got a couple of people who've mailed me this, that as somebody who has a YouTube following, and I'm not sure exactly what that means because my YouTube following is tiny compared to many, many other people, that, I have a responsibility to try and calm things down. I will tell you, I don't, and it's a losing job. No, you're not going to, you can't calm down a fandom this way. I think if you're in the news, I think if you're reporting on world events and you're doing that, I think you have a responsibility to be accurate. And I think you have a responsibility to be, to some extent, clinical. What I mean by clinical is make sure that you are not bringing emotion into a retelling of data and events. I think there's way too many commentators out there, way too many color commentary people. That's a term, by the way, color commentary. It's where you provide analysis, and it's not a racist term. I said that in another video, got the nastiest mail. Like, you use the word color commentary. That's a real term. It has nothing to do with race whatsoever. I think that you have a responsibility to be accurate. With comics, being accurate, you should be accurate, you should do your best. But at the same time, the arguments we're having are not ones based on, flat statistical data. It's not an argument based on, which sold better, Spawn or Youngblood. The answer is Spawn. But it is rather, does this comic, does the new uh, John Kent comic from Tom Taylor have enough or too little or too much, liberal politics? That's not a, you can't. There's not a hard data point there. That's where we are in the world of commentary. So anyway, that's my take on this. I think no. So a lot of people, hopefully, you just unclicked and you were done. It. No, I don't think. I don't think they have a responsibility. I don't think they have a moral obligation. I think it's a nice thing. I think people should try and calm people the f down. I think that's a good plan. I think that you should try and be accurate. I think you should try not to spread kind of crazy information that gets people all hot and frothy and goes crazy. I absolutely think that nobody should go out and contact these individuals and make a bunch of statements. That's wrong. Please don't do that. Obviously, you're being a dick in that scenario. No matter how justified you are, don't do it. But I also go by the stance of I'm just going to assume, and I realize this is maybe a bad assumption, that everyone here listening to this is some level of an adult, and on some level whether you're being a dick or not. So try not to be a dick, and that's really, unfortunately, that's the best I can do. I say unfortunately, I wouldn't want to do more. People should enjoy this hobby, this comics thing, in however they want, and I know that's kind of a crazy open-ended statement, but it should be that way. The great thing about entertainment is you get to consume it and enjoy it and take part in it in the way that fits you. That should be how it is. Let me know you disagree. Thanks for listening.